On the morning of June 6, 1944, Major Werner Pluskat stood in his observation bunker high above Omaha Beach. The bunker sat on a cliff about 300 feet above the sea. Below him, the world was gray and quiet. A thin mist covered the English Channel and hid the horizon. Pluskat had been awake for hours. German forces had been on alert for weeks. Planes had flown overhead all night. There were reports of paratroopers landing inland. None of this seemed unusual. Intelligence said an invasion might come soon, but soon could mean many things. Days, weeks, even months. As dawn approached, Pluskat raised his binoculars and looked out to sea. First, everything looked normal. Then he noticed something strange. A dark line appeared where the sky met the water. It slowly grew wider and sharper. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't the tide. It was ships. As the light increased, the dark line became many shapes, too many to count. Landing craft filled the water. Behind them were destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. The sea was crowded with steel. Pluskat understood at once. This was not a raid. This was not a small attack. This was something much bigger. He had fought on the Eastern Front in Russia. He had seen massive armies and endless battles. He understood large numbers and overwhelming force. But this was different. This was not just large. It was beyond anything he had ever seen. Later, the number would be confirmed. About 7,000 ships from 8 Allied nations crossed the Channel that morning. Nearly 200,000 soldiers would land that day. It was the largest amphibious invasion in history. To Pluskat, it felt unreal. The fleet seemed to bend the horizon. It looked like a floating city made of metal. It was a message written in steel. We have more resources than you can imagine, and we are using them now. His hands shook as he reached for the telephone. He reported what he saw. The response was calm and dismissive. Headquarters suggested it might be a small raid. The weather reports said a large landing was impossible. Pluskat insisted. He told them the entire sea was filled with ships from one end of the horizon to the other. He said this was the invasion. Still, they doubted him. German command had expected the invasion to come at Pas-de-Calais, where the channel was narrowest. That was where logic pointed. That was where the strongest defenses and reserve forces waited. Normandy was considered unlikely. Because of this, German forces in Normandy were not prepared for an attack of this size. Units were spread out. Reinforcements were far away. Plans relied on counterattacks that would take hours to organize. The Germans had prepared for a war that made sense on paper. The Allies chose surprise instead. At last, Pluskat received permission to act. He ordered his men to prepare the guns. Shells were loaded. Barrels were raised toward the sea. The first shots were fired. Artillery shells arced over the water and exploded among the ships. Some hit, most missed. For every ship damaged, dozens more moved forward. Pluskat felt the hopelessness of it. His guns were powerful, but they were nothing against an endless fleet. It was like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. Then the Allies replied. Battleships turned their massive guns toward the shore. The bombardment began. The ground shook. Explosions tore into the countryside. Concrete bunkers cracked. The Atlantic Wall was being smashed apart by industrial force. Soon, landing craft reached the beach. American soldiers poured out into the surf. German machine guns opened fire. Many soldiers fell. The water turned red. The casualties were terrible. For a short time, the defense seemed to work. The Americans were pinned down. Losses were heavy. Then the tide turned. Allied destroyers moved dangerously close to shore. They fired directly at German bunkers. One by one, the strong points were destroyed. Specialized vehicles rolled out of the sea and onto the beach. The Germans had nothing like them. As Pluskat watched, something changed in his thinking. He stopped seeing individual ships and soldiers. He saw the system behind them. He saw factories. He imagined American assembly lines producing planes, tanks, trucks, and weapons in numbers Germany could never match. The invasion was not a miracle. It was the result of industry. On that day, the German Air Force flew only a few hundred missions. The Allies flew over 14,000. For every German plane, there were dozens of Allied aircraft in the sky. The reason was not bravery or skill. German pilots were brave and well-trained. The difference was production. The Allies built planes faster than Germany could destroy them. The same was true for tanks. German Tigers and Panthers were powerful, but expensive and slow to build. The Allies produced tens of thousands of simpler tanks. They planned to win by numbers, not perfection. Pluskat understood the truth with terrible clarity. This war was not being decided by courage or ideology. It was being decided by factories. Willpower could not stop a bomber. Belief could not create ships. Determination could not replace destroyed industry. He and his men were good soldiers. They did their duty, but they were facing numbers that no skill could overcome. For Pluskat, the war ended that morning. Not because of defeat on the battlefield, but because he saw the math of modern war made visible. Germany had not lost the war on the beaches of Normandy. It had lost it in the factories of America. On June 6, 1944, as the sea turned to steel, the numbers became real.